It is a Wednesday and time for Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness. Yes, and Mr. Scott Campsall joins us. How are you, Mr. Scott?
Morning, Mr. Pollard. Well,
I threw you off. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah, I've never had that introduction before. How do we work that one?
Usually we're so respectful, but this is like, okay, Mr. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. And I just thought I'd switch things up. I won't switch things up, though. Andrew Allison joins us as well from St. Paul's Leaskdale Presbyterian Church. How are you, Andrew?
Hey, guys. Thanks for letting me tune in.
Oh, no problem at all.
Life is good.
That's good. Now, I always like to do just the update. You guys continue to minister virtually?
That's right. Yeah, for the foreseeable future, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and you really can't see a change. And we were talking before we came to air about the fact that in some ways we're going through the easier period right now in summer in dealing with the pandemic, and you wonder what's ahead coming up in the fall or the winter, because now we're talking about Canadian climate, and it's just not going to be as warm, and you're not going to have those opportunities to just step outside and catch your breath.
Yeah, well, you will, but there'll be sniffly noses and coughs to go with it.
Yeah, and you want to clear a room. Well, and in all seriousness, though, Scott, you were mentioning that your son was in a restaurant or in a place indoors, and something caught his throat, and he had a cough quickly, and he said everybody turned and looked at him.
Yeah,
and that's so common these days. I deal with allergies. And you wonder, you want to clear a room, just sniffle a bit, and people are, okay, is something going on? And obviously that has cranked up the anxieties. Andrew, how have you found things? We've talked over the last couple of months. People obviously very anxious. At the same level, or have things calmed a little bit because it is summer?
I think it's both, right? I think to be outside and to have some return of normalcy helps. I think as folks realize, gosh, look what we have coming at us by way of November, December, January, then I think there is sort of a white noise panic, nothing maybe specific. It really is an interesting time, and as a community, we're trying to get our own heads, our own families through things. But like you mentioned, the prospect of doing this as a community and remaining kind and being sort of filled with grace towards each other, it is stretching folks to the limit.
Does it put a strain on yourself in dealing with those situations as well? Because I'm sure you've heard from a person or two going, why is God doing this?
That's a great question. I don't think I've actually heard that, but I think it's underlying. If there is a God, then how does God allow these things to happen? As a community, we face some pretty tragic deaths of young people, and the same kind of question could be posed there. Life is tough. I think Jordan Peterson says life is a fatal disease. It's a little bit morbid, but none of us are getting off alive, and there are difficult bits to living. There are also super fantastic things about being alive and being human and being a species that, well, sadly can contact these sorts of things, but then also have the capacity to work away at developing solutions and vaccines and those sorts of things. So life is a challenge, and I think where my greatest concern in this is for folks who have had some mental health battles prior, and then this kind of stuff is difficult for all of us, and so we just want to sort of reach out and say reach out, be careful with each other and grant each other some latitude. It will be a test of our community and society, how we deal with these things. We can be vindictive and harsh and brutal on leaders and tough on the weakest. And I'm praying, hoping for a different story for us to play out.
No, go ahead, Scott.
I think it's interesting when something like this happens and then somebody says, why is God doing this? And like when we had that conversation a while back about face masks and being tolerant with people and everything, and I posted the video of us, just the interview that we had done, and one of the things that occurred to me was like, everybody's talking about their God-given right to not wear masks, and I'm trying to wrap my head around why everybody thinks that God didn't provide the mask to begin with to protect us from this. and where, we're talking about even like, something happens with a drunk driver, and why is it God that did the drunk driving? God didn't do the drunk driving. There's a point where I think things are going to happen and life is terrible. And so maybe when people say, why did God do this? Maybe it is, how is God protecting us through this?
Right. I mean, and we know that everybody's going to die, but does everybody live?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay with the why is God doing this question in a difficult time. I think it's actually healthy and human, as long as the same question comes out when we look at a sunset or a sunrise or a goldfinch or a Baltimore Oriole, or as long as there's a balance of, look at the beauty that's around us too. There are some stunning things about planet Earth, and if the balance is fair, then I'm good with the hard questions. I think it's not really human to fail to ask the hard questions. Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me or to us? And then obviously the next question is, how are we going to get through it?
Well,
that's I guess the point of this.
Yeah, and I think let's talk about that when you're counseling someone, and I'm sure it is going to come up. You're going to have parents going, my kids are going back to school, and I'm just worried. I'm worried about a second wave. Where do you start? Because there are so many different avenues in trying to sit down and talk to someone.
I think all of these conversations, begin at some point at values, right? What matters most to us. So, Dan, you and I had boys that went through hockey together, and those were crazy days. We drove to Kingston and back, and those sorts of things. And I don't know that that's going to happen this year. Gathering in arenas and gathering in change rooms, and because values are going to start to play out. And hockey was a pretty important thing for us. So what does matter most here? These are the kinds of questions I think that we're having to ask ourselves, and I actually think they're overdue questions. Because we've just been tootling along, assuming that the values that have been handed to us by society would have been legit, but I don't know that they have been. And I think that people, in some ways, are having quieter lives and a little bit more space or time with family, a little bit more time to think. And I know most of this is very difficult, but some of this is like, hey, this actually feels better to get off this rat race, talk with folks who aren't sitting on the 404 for 3.5, 4 hours a day, and they're saying there's something right about this. And so there is a whole collective, individual but collective conversation going on around what matters the most. So putting kids back into school, or I was listening to CBC today about bus drivers going back and the risk that they face. They basically have 3 classrooms on their bus, each of them, and whatever exposure that goes along with that. What matters most to us as a society? Is it making a pile of coin? Is it trying to make our mark on the sports world? Is it something to do with being careful with each other and valuing life?
What happens though in that time, in that extra time, and you're looking in the mirror and you don't like what you see?
Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility.
Well, yeah, all of a sudden you slow it down and you go, what am I really about?
Yeah. I've actually been amazed, Dan, that more of those conversations haven't happened. As a pastor, I thought maybe there'd be more people knocking on my door saying, can you help me process my life? Because I'm realizing that I may have, bet on the wrong horse here. I think to this point, much of our thinking as a society has been around just survival. Just, I got to get through today. I got to get my groceries and I got to get back without getting sick. And I hope that there'll be an end to that sort of just immediate thinking, and that there'll be some larger, because that's kind of our gig, is for people to be careful and thoughtful and reflective and contemplative about their lives. To date, I haven't had many conversations with folks about that. I've been a bit surprised.
That's a frightening conversation to have, though, because that's an admittance to yourself that things weren't as good. And you kind of, you touched on it, that, we were just going along and things seemed to be very good. But as a society, maybe they weren't as good as we thought they were.
Yeah. In fact, maybe this sickness is exposing a larger sickness. And I think so. And then so this is one of the beauties about being a human being, is that we actually have this capacity to relook at our lives. The coyotes aren't thinking like this. But we do have this cognizant capacity to say, is this actually what I think I'm all about, or the world is all about? So more than terrifying, I think it's brilliantly freeing. You are not actually in the trolley tracks and you have to stay here. There is change. This can be done differently and done better, done well, and done in a caring, compassionate, kind, thoughtful way. So I actually, I don't like anything about COVID. It's awful, and I wouldn't. But this piece of it does lend itself to some actually humanizing thinking and behavior, I hope.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm wondering, Scott, part of it's the old analogy that unless you take that oxygen mask, in the plane, you can't help anybody else. So that usually means self-improvement. And whether or not you have found that people have now stepped up to say, you know what, there are some things I can do with my own life, and maybe part of that is fitness and learning something like karate.
Actually, I think our big influx, like we started getting really busy when we started announcing we were going to go back into indoor classes, and we got a lot of parents that ended up signing up kids, and I think part of it was the parents wanted to get the kids out of the house, just for multiple reasons. But I think part of it was just they wanted to get them active. Like when activities are being closed down everywhere, and then there's not much for kids to do, and so when they find out, well, there's martial arts, we could try that, but even when we were online, our fitness classes actually sort of took off, where it was sort of the thing we considered to be I want to call it the loss leader, but it was not the strongest part of our business, and when we went online, it actually got more popular, and it was just because people could log in at a regular time, they were accountable, they were and they were able to get active, and they were able to feel good and stuff. So I think people started taking value in what they had. And even what I'm noticing in the gym is people are so thankful that they can go back and work out. Again, don't dare cough in the gym, but it's because it's the same thing. Everybody, what, like that kind of thing. But then they calm down. But there's still that heightened little bit of stress. But there's you watch the people that are there and they're working out and they're wiping everything down and they're helping staff and they're feeling, I like the analogy we've sort of talked about the community and just the slogan, we're all in this together. And I think there's some stuff that maybe technically we're not, just because there is still that, every person for themselves type mental attitude. But there is something different, just that everybody's, we've noticed in our own way of doing things, that people are willing to make allowances. They want to know when do they put their masks on, when do they not put their masks on, where do they put their shoes, how can they clean this? There is some kind of community support, and I think that goes hand in hand. People are just so thankful to be able to come back, and so they want to make sure they don't lose it again.
Andrew, I just want to pick up on something that Scott said too. Talking about the community, and I read this a while ago where someone said we are not all in the same boat. We're in the same body of water, but we're not all in the same boat. And I'm sure at your level, you're dealing with that because everybody has their own things to deal with during the pandemic.
Yeah, even just economically, there are some people that actually flourished in this, and they're making money like they've never made money. And then there are folks, that I'm aware of in my own congregation who've lost jobs. So, the fun thing for me, or the neat thing for me, is the people who have been in the black in this. Some of them coming to me saying, "Put me in contact with some families that are dealing with less because we've got more, or we haven't taken a hit here." And that's the kind of community thing that fires me up and makes me think, hey, this we can do this together. And then you say, on other matters, like folks are under additional strain. And people still get cancer and people still have heart issues and have to go to the hospital for other issues. And those were always overwhelming circumstances. And now we've got this often can't visit the person in the hospital. So we are trying to figure out how to do this together, though we admit that we're not all in the same boat, and it's a bit. It would be naive to believe that.
We've seen that too, where somebody is we've got Zoom simulcasts happening with our classes, and so people that we wouldn't even consider to be worried about contracting the virus or anything, and they're staying on Zoom. And when we start talking to them, well, yeah, but we have grandparents that are visiting in a couple weeks, and so that's why the kids aren't going. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we didn't think about visitors, because we know the family's healthy and strong, somebody all of a sudden, Jennifer was talking to somebody that they want to change their lesson plans, and then they were talking about going back to school. And they said, well, yeah, but our son, he's got a compromised immunity, so therefore she's not going back to school because of that. I mean, oh, yeah, we didn't think of that. Like, there's just so many variables that people are experiencing.
I think the bottom line in all of this, the conversation is, as much as we're all dealing with it on our individual basis, to remember that we are all dealing with something, and the one word that keeps coming back is community.
Yeah.
And
I think so.
and to keep moving at least forward. And we've heard the word pivot, and we'll be doing a lot of that. I would think as we head into some of the colder weather. Listen, guys, I want to thank you for your time again. You can never talk about this enough, because people are dealing with it on a daily basis. Right now, the numbers are low, and we want to keep it that way. But part of that is making sure that we are doing our part, and hopefully we're doing our part in having a conversation. We'll catch up with you again, Andrew, in a few weeks.
Awesome, guys. Stay kind.
Take care.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.
We'll catch up with you next week.
Sounds great.
Take care. Bye-bye. That is Scott Campsall from Akami Kai Karate, and Andrew Allison, the pastor at St. Paul's Leaskdale Presbyterian Church.